are the two people who will signal the end of the world already here? In the last days, the Bible predicts that two witnesses will be released into the earth who will minister for 1,250 days, with the power to shoot fire out of their mouth, shut the heavens, turn water into blood, and smite the earth. The Bible also states that there will be all sorts of plagues, and an evangelistic ministry like the world has not seen since the Old Testament. If we look at the disasters that have been going on, from viruses to earthquakes, and if we look at the most influential people in the current day and age, the question we should be asking ourselves is,
now this story is completely and utterly tragic, and it does contain very graphic details, so please be advised. Amy Deal was a 10-year-old child who was murdered in Phoenix, Arizona in 2011 due to ongoing neglect and abuse from various family members. Amy was born to Shirley and David in the year 2000. Neighbors report that Amy was a victim of abuse from a very young age, and they reported seeing her being forced to walk up and down a sidewalk for hours barefoot in the hot Arizona heat. At other times, it was reported that she was often beaten with a paddle, and she was also forced to eat hot sauce and dog feces. School officials also claimed that Amy and her siblings came into school filthy dirty. The school reported that Amy was riddled with head lice and also had cat urine on her clothes and shoes. On July 12, 2011, police officials were called to the house where Amy Deal was living at, and what they saw was absolutely horrific. Amy was found deceased, locked inside a tiny little footlocker, having suffocated. At the time, she was living at her grandmother's house with her grandmother here and her aunt Cynthia. Also living at the house was Cynthia's daughter Samantha and Samantha's husband John Allen. All the adults claimed to officials that they had simply been playing hide and seek with the children, and Amy had somehow locked herself inside this trunk and had unfortunately deceased during the night. However, police did suspect foul play due to the extent of Amy's injuries. After an extensive interrogation, Samantha and John actually confessed to locking Amy in the trunk as a form of punishment. She was then left there overnight to suffocate in the blistering hot Phoenix heat. Both Samantha and John were arrested for first-degree murder, and Amy's grandmother and Cynthia, her aunt, were arrested on counts of child abuse. Samantha and John were both convicted in 2017 and sentenced to death.
This case will put you off ever talking to anyone online. This male stabbed his girlfriend over 90 times and then FaceTimed his sister to show her the dead body. Ashley Wadsworth was a 19-year-old girl who met Jack Seppel on Facebook in 2015. She was roughly 11 or 12 at the time, and Jack was around 15 or 16. They spent the following years continuously sharing messages and chatting online about their lives. Now, Ashley was from Canada and Jack was from Essex in the UK. Jack treated her really nicely to begin with, talking to her all the time and showering her with gifts and attention. When Ashley turned 16, the relationship between the two began to develop. Ashley would ask her parents often if she could go to the UK to travel to meet Jack. At first, they were obviously against this, seeing as Jack lived abroad and the two had never met. However, in 2021, Ashley had graduated high school and saved up to make the trip to meet Jack. Jack actually reassured Ashley's family that he would guard her with his life. Little did they know, she wouldn't actually need protecting from anyone other than him. In November 2021, the pair met for the first time. They went sightseeing around London, and Ashley documented this on her social media. However, things began to take a turn over the next couple of months. Jack started controlling Ashley. He demanded her social media passwords and made her delete photos without him in them. He also became physically abusive towards her. She was covered in bruises from Jack, and in one altercation, he smashed a glass over her head. The young girl tried to reach out for help from her friends, but it was clear she was scared of Jack. Bearing in mind Jack had access to all of her social media, she sent a message to one of her friends one day warning, "Be careful what you say, he's watching," and she then unsent the message to prevent him seeing it. On the 1st of February 2022, Ashley turned up to Jack's mum's flat barefoot. She had run there, she was crying and hysterical. She said Jack had smashed her phone, beat her up and cut her hand. Now, following this incident, her parents actually booked her a flight home. She was relieved by this and returned to Jack's flat to wait to go home. Now that day, bearing in mind this is now obviously nighttime in Canada, Ashley's sister received a text begging her to wake up and answer the phone. When she eventually got this message, she tried to ring Ashley back and got no reply. At this point, Jack's mum tried to go round to Jack's house and get in. She wasn't able to do so, and the police were eventually called. When officers arrived, Jack wouldn't open the door, so they forced entry. They found an absolutely hideous scene. Jack was lying next to Ashley's dead body in a pool of blood. Jack was casually on FaceTime to his sister, showing her the dead body. He admitted to strangling her and stabbing her. Jack was sentenced to life with a minimum of 23.5 years.
On October 30th, 2011, a 44-year-old wife and mother of 4 disappeared after a Halloween party in Dyersburg, Tennessee. This is the devastating tale of Karen Swift, which serves as a tragic reminder of a betrayal from her own. About 6 weeks later, on December 10th, 2011, her body was found 2 miles away from her home in a cemetery. At that time, her husband, David Swift, was considered a person of interest. However, due to a lack of proper evidence, the case went cold for the time being. Then, in August 2022, David was finally indicted for the first-degree murder of his wife.
So let me tell you about this case, Lars Mittank. So Lars Mittank was a German international. He was 28 years old, and he was on vacation in Bulgaria with a group of his friends. He was at this bar watching like a soccer game. He got into an argument with the opposing team's supporter. So they ended up getting into like this big old brawl. They like beat him up, and they apparently kidnapped him, and he was gone for a couple of days. His friends were super concerned. He came back and was like, nothing happened. It's all good. Y'all don't have to come and stay with me. He was so adamant about his friends not staying with him, right? Which in itself is a little weird. So anyways, he ended up going to the doctor, and he had a busted eardrum from the fight. So then things started getting weird. So the day after that, he started calling his mom, and he told her to cancel all of his credit cards. And he said, if anything happens to me, just know I was killed. Like, there's people after me and they're trying to hurt me. And his mom was like, what are you talking about? Whatever, like blah, blah, blah. Get on a flight and come home. So he goes to the airport the next day. He has all of his stuff. He's like, let me fly home. Like, I want to go home, right? They were like, well, you have a busted eardrum. You're not allowed to fly. He's then seen on CCTV footage in a full panic, just sprinting out of the airport in like this. It is honestly, the video is bone chilling. Like, he looks as if somebody is
just
really
signed his death warrant.
Yeah, like really trying to get him. And I don't know if he believed that like everybody was in on this. I don't know what was going through his head, but the way that he reacted to not being able to fly was like, on the video, you see him run. He just keeps running, and he runs out of the camera sight, never to be seen again. Since that day, he has never been seen again.